Hi everyone, welcome to week 4 essay post. So this is actually a two-part assignment. If you're looking at this, one of the bullet points you might notice is this is a research essay and not an argumentative essay. This essay that's due this week is really just trying to gather all the raw materials, and then in week 5 we're going to be putting all those together to create an argumentative essay. So in this week, just try to focus on gathering materials. So I'm going to talk about a couple things that I want you to really pay attention to in order to gather the right materials. So if you're looking at here, one of the things you need to do is look at 4 relatable sources that are credible. Now, when we talk about credible sources, this could mean scholarly sources. So a scholarly source is a source that has been peer reviewed, meaning it's been reviewed by people in that discipline and they have, quote unquote, deemed it scholarly. A scholarly work can be not peer reviewed, and actually a lot of literature criticism is not necessarily peer reviewed because most of the time it's someone's opinion, and having it peer reviewed isn't necessarily that important within our discipline. Whereas if you're thinking about peer review, that's really important in scientific work. Like if you're a psychologist and you're doing a study, you want to make sure it's peer reviewed so that everything is kosher basically. Whereas in literature, a little less important, but you can still tell if it's scholarly by the person's writing. Is it biased? Does it seem well thought out? Also, too, who's publishing it? And lastly, where are you finding it? One of the things I always find is that many people just go straight to Google, it seems, to find their sources. And I think that there's some benefit to that. The problem is Google is not going to give you scholarly or even maybe sometimes credible sources. If you type in fences, one of the first things that popped up for me was Wikipedia. Wikipedia, hate to break it to you, is not a great source in the sense that we don't know who's writing it. Well, I guess you could technically go into the footnotes and see, but a lot of times, you're looking at someone named, J. Smith 4078 or something. And so it's hard to decide if it's scholarly or not, or credible or not. Another thing, there's tons of other websites that do kind of like summaries of things or criticism of things. And you got to be very, very careful about where you're grabbing this information. Because, if you go into getting a source that is not credible, that can really taint the whole paper. So, for example, the word ethos means credibility. In the very early translations of the word ethos, it was really more like equivalent to not credibility but dwelling place. So it meant like where you dwelled, and so it's sort of like where you live at in society. So if you weren't very credible, you didn't really maybe have this metaphorical or symbolic place in society that was great, right? And the same thing too is if you look at this paper, if you're using sources that are not credible, the place where your paper is living is not a very desirable place, right? And so we want to find credible sources in order to make sure that you are getting the best support for your paper. Now, I said don't all the things you shouldn't use. I mentioned this the other week, but the library is a great resource for these things. And if you go to the library, one of the things that you might want to try using is EBSCOhost. So if you're on EBSCOhost, make sure, and I'm on it right now, to click a database. And so there's all these different databases that you can click from. I personally would go down to, where is that one? Well, if you really want to, try to get everything, I would just maybe do Academic Search Complete. since we're looking at fences, particularly, I think that it won't give you too much outside of it. So I would just try the academic search complete version of it. That's just sort of the everything version of EBSCOhost. And so one of the things that's nice about this too is if you do click on this, there's a way, I'm going to type in Fences by August Wilson, that you can see I got over 100,000 sources. So you're going to want to narrow down. Don't just click the name of it. Some of the things you might want to do is look at setting, plot, theme, like combining it with those. And I put the Boolean operators as a handout not too long ago to kind of show you how to do those searches. So if you have any questions on that, again, just let me know. So I just want to make sure that you are getting the best sources for this, because that's one of the things I'm going to be evaluating. Another thing in terms of this paper, like I said before, this is just a collection paper in a lot of ways. So if you want to think about things that you're searching for, the thing you are writing about is sort of this reflection of society. How does this play reflect the society? So as you can kind of maybe tell that later on in the next week, that one of the things we're going to be doing is looking at if this is an accurate or accurate, I was going to say effective, but accurate is probably a better way to describe it, an accurate representation of this time period. So this week you're just getting all that stuff, and then next week you're actually going to be turning it into an argument. So what you might want to do is one of the things you could research, and then this academic search complete will be fine with this too. Look at what the area and was at that time in the time period and get a historical sense of what it looked like. And if you find a documentary, like a video or something, I would be okay with that too. And so just make sure that you think it's credible. But anyway, what I would do is one of the searches is not just search the play Fences, but maybe look up like what the area was like, and then see like, oh, okay, well, this author describes the area as this. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I would have two different kind of searches this week. One where you're just looking at the play, and then two, just looking at the time period / area, and just sort of gathering those materials, right? So if you notice, the main question this week is how does the plays reflect the society in which they were set? That's where you can sort of say, okay, well, it reflects it this and this ways, right? And so that's why I think it's beneficial not only to have information from the play, but maybe looking up sources that are telling you about this area, from a historical point of view. And then that way next week when you use these sources, you can evaluate whether that's an accurate or effective depiction. Okay? So I just wanted to really stress to you that this is a research sort of gathering week, this rather than an argumentative essay where you're making a particular argument. This week you're just basically gathering information. And so if you're trying to think about how to sequence your paragraphs, you might have a paragraph on how Fences describes the area, or the characters in the area, or the setting in the area, or the plot, probably not plot, setting, and then look up, like what's the setting like, the real world setting like, that sort of thing. So if you have any questions, like I know this is kind of a weird week because it's building, this week is building for next week. And so that might be kind of a interesting or different proposition for you all. So if you do have any questions, just let me know, because it's really important that I want this to be a good foundational piece for week 5. Okay? All right. Thanks again for all your work on the discussion boards this week with the children's literature, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.